Hey, what's up, Canada and beyond? It is Thursday, June 13th. Do you know what the clowns are up to out there in clown worlds today? There's some big stuff shaking out there. So we're going to get right into it here in just a second. But as you guys are probably seeing, other content creators, other broadcasters, political commentators, journalists, the full gamut is experiencing the repercussions of the implementation of Bill C-11 right now. I'm super excited at some of the stuff that we're going to have coming on LGM really, really soon. I had a really great meeting with the developer today. But this is the time, guys. We're getting to crunch time. This is a relationship. We have a community here, and I don't do this in any capacity without you guys, whether it's news stories, information, follow-ups, communications, regional updates, uh, all of the shares, the likes, the comments, the shares and the comments. That's what really drives things on the platforms. That's what they're looking for. You guys do a great job of that. Whichever platform you're watching from, make sure you give it a big thumbs up. We're going to show you a couple of places here real quick, and I'm going to kind of continue to beat this drum a little bit because it's only going to get worse, guys. We're just seeing the beginning stages of the implementation of Bill C-11, and they've got two more coming down the pipe, Bill C-63 and Bill C-70. We're going to get somebody on soon to talk about the evolution of what these bills are going to mean to anybody that wants to have a voice out there in the avatar digital universe. It's not going to be allowed, and there's going to be real world consequences for daring to speak out against the establishment on all of those levels. So all of it matters. Every share, every like, every subscription matters, and it matters now more than ever. This isn't just about donations, but that's an important part of it as well. You can kind of tell the ones who are in it for the business and the others who are in it for the people that are in it to hold establishment, truth to power on all sides of the fence. And those are the guys that need your help. So, in my particular case, if you feel compelled to find value in what we are doing, you can help out that way through donate at whatsupcanada.org, or you can find a link to buy me a coffee on one of the platforms here as well. But whether it's me or somebody else that is taking the risk to deliver truth and information relevant to what we really need in this day and age, I encourage you to do everything that you can to support them. We're never going to run out of causes, but if we allow our independent media to disappear, we don't want that to be on us. So, without further ado, chime in on one of the platforms where you're watching from. I see Rocky Mountain House in the house. Hey, Nikki, Nine Doors. Well, I haven't heard that in a long time. Hey, Patricia from Cornwall, Ontario. It's great to see you guys, and don't think for a second to take for granted the time that you guys give to watching this program and the work that you guys do to make sure that it gets out there. I've gone through a lot of changes in the last little while. I hope you guys are liking the new format and get used to it. Monday and Tuesday is going to be in-depth news on related events to each other, so it's not going to be all over the map, helter-skelter stuff. Every Wednesday, we will have an amazing guest that has a relevant input. So Wednesday is going to be guest night. Thursday, we're going to kind of take a 60,000 foot view and of what's going on in some of the conflict zones and the clown world that our leaders have been creating. I see a few more people chiming in. Hey, Toronto GTA in the house. Awesome to see you, Gemini Moon. Washington County, Pennsylvania. Thank you. Good to see you in the house. One thing that I've been screaming for since the beginning is that border between Canada and the USA. That's kind of just a line and a printed on a map, and they want us to believe that our problems are different. They are not. The only thing that separates us by that line is how our quote unquote leadership responds to said events in the world. So at the end of the day, both nations have the same oppression, the systematic oppression due to infiltration. And yeah, whole great big scary sketchy story. Most of you guys are know the bulk of that. So we're going to get into what we're going to talk about tonight. Tonight's going to be the 60,000-foot view of some of the geopolitical shenanigans going on right now. And pretty much everybody knows that the Muppet Show is touring Europe, and right now they are in Italy being hosted by uh, Georgia Maloney over there. And, this has been, it's interesting to see how quickly people are paying attention. People are paying attention all over the world. It's a very different world out there in all of the media spaces as to what it was a year ago, as far as for interest level, awareness, and acumen to discuss the problems. Last night, so I'm going to pop around here with a few different things. Last night we had Tom Marazzo on, and if you don't know Tom, he's a legend in the adult discussion when it comes to what happened at the convoy in Ottawa, and narrating that story through that. He's actually written a book on that, but he's also a former captain in well versed in strategic education when it comes to military application and scenarios and all of the things that these guys have to know. So we had an amazing discussion to add a whole lot of context to where we can be effective right now, genuinely, and understanding a bit of the difference between important information, relevant information, information that we need, and a lot of noise, and how to kind of separate some of that news from noise, as well as wasted effort and where to be effective with your effort. So I encourage everybody to get over to What's Up Canada on Rumble and catch that interview. That is these interviews are going to be so much more amazing when I'm going to be able to focus on, exactly more pointed discussion. So we'll be able to have better and maybe not more, but awesome stuff. Tom was gracious enough to find some time to join us yesterday for about an hour, and it was absolutely a fantastic conversation. But I also want to harp on getting subscribed on Rumble. It's important, guys. We have literally had 37,000 people cut from our community, or from our access from our community on Facebook. So we're kind of in regroup mode, and I'm going to be focusing a lot on a couple of specific platforms, and kind of getting everybody familiar with what to expect, what to see, and what to look for if you haven't connected over there. And I know a great majority of people on Facebook have not connected over there. Likewise, the people that we've lost on YouTube and other places. But yeah, find us on What's Up Canada. Hit the follow button, and when you're in here watching the stream, give it a little thumbs up. That's what helps us get seen on the platforms and brings new viewers, new community, allows us to introduce other people to more relevant, truthful information. And so the format, guys, as I described, Monday, Tuesday news, Wednesday guest, Thursday 60,000-foot view, Friday is the deciphering conspiracy from theory and how it applies and impacts our financial stability. Questions with Bryce. He's an open door for questions. So really a community minded. Get your questions answered on what's to do in the financial situation of the universe right now. So after every show, Monday to Friday, 6 p.m. Central, everything that I use in the show that I reference on these, these platforms, um, gets published on Substack. So I bring all of the receipts, all of the resources, the sources, the documents. If there's PDFs, you'll be able to download the documents, whatever I've used in the show. Every the morning after the show, everything is there. You can have access to that. Right now, that is free for everybody. There is no paywall. That's being said, it is Substack does provide a great way for us to for people to support us. You can get all the information and whatnot, and you can hit subscribe on Substack, and it will open up an option where you can, give us, $5 a month or $47 a year, however you want to do, or you can stay on free. No current plan, but that's just one way that you can voluntarily um, help us keep going and keep the lights on and the bills going while we're doing this. So, all right, now we're going to get into it. The news, the G7 over in Italy right now. When we looked at this picture, the G20 about a year ago, um, some of these people weren't there, and there was in the same instance. Uh, People being axed. You could literally see the far left ideologues being removed from the G20. And so, over the course of the day, there's been a lot of discussion about what's been going on at this G7. But this is, some political looks at this. So they're really pointing out each one of the bureaucrats, and we've got a couple of different takes on this. This one just lost an election. This one's 50-year lowest polling numbers. Just lost an election. That's Macron in France. We're going to talk about him and his Napoleon complex, kind of being the trigger as to why we are seeing this a monumental shift away from the far left in Europe. That so the you know I keep saying all the time, guys, the cabal is dead. They just don't know they're dead yet. They are literally the chickens with their heads cut off, and this is exactly what we're seeing: is a couple of pompous dignitaries that are basically having their heads handed to them on the political platter in the nations and the states that they represent, becoming the latest version of the sacrificial political lamb. That's what these guys basically every one of these ones standing up here now. I think of any of these, the only one that might slide through this a little bit might be Georgia Maloney. But Mr. Sunak from the UK, and we got a funny little clip about him in just a minute, and Ms. van der Leyen from the EU. These guys are having some pretty catastrophic political campaigns, and this is a big year on the world stage. I think 47% of the world's population is going through elections or the cycle or process within this year, and some following very shortly thereafter. But somebody has been gathering this is their polling ratings currently as being within the nations that they are representing here at the G7. So this is kind of, indicative of the clown show masquerading like everything is sunshine, lollipops, rainbows, and unicorns. And the reality of it is very, very far from the different. But this is the disconnect from reality that is so dangerous and has got us in this position that we're in, is these quote unquote elected Muppets over there. We now know that they are not even elected, they are infiltrated operatives. And as Canada is very rapidly discovering, and we've covered a lot of that, and we will cover a lot more of the spying and the political infiltration, the political interference and the meddling. And how we need to not just look at who the 10 or 11 or whatever are that they're pointing fingers at right now. It's not about that. We need to replace that, looking for targets with applying the letter of the law. and what makes these guys compromise, and apply that same filter and lens to all of them. And this is where they all run into a serious problem, I think. And that's where we needs to, and it's up to us. And I was talking with Sean Newman about this yesterday. It's up to us to steer the direction within the Overton window that's provided to us into shifting the lens of focus from not just the 10 or 11 who are compromised under this particular interpretation of that lens, but all of them. And when you look at what those 10 or 11 are guilty of, I think that same lens applied to the World Economic Forum, for example, is a far more accurate representation of the amount of corruption within our political system, and which tells us how big the mess is, how much we have to clean up. And there's really only one easy button to all of that, and that's literally to pull an Iceland. So we'll be talking a lot about that, more about that in coming days as well. But so that's kind of where the staged photo op is at with the European the G7 event in. Oops, I double hit the wrong button. Not quite as good with this as I necessarily thought I was, perhaps. All right, I think we've got this fixed here now. So, yes, there we go. I'm not going to play this video because I'm not going to force anybody to listen to Mr. Sparkle Socks. But the point of this one is uh, um, Parasite Vulture, Mr. Alansky. I'm going to drop the Z in further communications. It's worked well for the Duran as well to beat the algorithms by not saying his full name. So we'll, from this day forward, refer to the actor Muppet on the right, because there's more than one actor Muppets there, but the one on the right as the grifter, Mr. Alansky. Uh, Typical vulture parasite that he is there in um, at the G7 in Italy, and of course, making himself the center of attention for a conflict that has done nothing but eradicate the Ukrainian population to cover up the messes that meat muppets like this guy over here on the left, as we discussed last night with Tom, are absolutely oblivious to reality and are nothing. Mr. Trudeau is nothing more than a barking chihuahua, and he's pissing off a Russian bear dog. And they are collectively, these meat muppets are really, really, really uh, biting off more than they can chew, and robbing from all of us in order to do that. So this is a grift between these guys, 100%. And out of this grift comes some major announcements. And we'll start with this one. Biden and Mr. Zelensky to sign a 10-year security agreement between the U.S. and Ukraine, which means Biden wants another 10-year war. Do Americans want another 10-year war? Let's see here. We got a couple of neighbors to the south, friends and fellow hostages. Lisa, anybody interested in another 10-year war with America on behalf of? Uh, you know, anybody? No. Anybody want a 10-year war in Ukraine? I don't think anybody really actually wants a 10-year war in the Ukraine. But this is what Biden is signing America up for. And the interesting thing about these two meat muppets, these ones, this guy is happy to uh, unjustly instigate a war costing more than 1 million lives so far, and they're quite content. This meat muppet, and of course, this meat muppet here, are quite content to fight this cover up war to the last Ukrainian. right? So that's the disturbing part of this, to me, is the similarities between that muppet willing to fight to the last Ukrainian and this meat muppet willing to fight to the last Canadian to fund to extract every resource and dollar in this country to fight the death of it down to the last Ukrainian of a war that these guys are covering up. That is literally what these guys are doing, stealing from us to pay for a war to cover up their crimes. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. So, Mr. Poopy Pants is committing to a 10-year war, and Mr. Trudeau is adding another $5 billion that he's going to print that you're going to have to digest through higher interest and inflation in order to cover another $5 billion worth of money that's going to go over to the Ukraine and likely, uh, you know, I think we've got a good idea who's benefiting from that, and you can see here where uh, Donald Best. And again, all of these links will be in the show, guys. I encourage you to follow a lot of the platforms here that I'm sharing with you guys on X, on Twitter. You can find What's Up Canada on there. We're streaming there as well. If you're following there, I appreciate you guys following over on X. I don't know. It looks like there's 68 or 70 views there. Thank you guys for tuning in there. I don't always remember to talk about X or Twitter because I was really, really ticked because they would not give me back my platform after they promised amnesty. But anyway, back to the story. While millions of Canadians are struggling to keep a roof over their heads, use food banks, and slip into despair and choosing made rather than deal with this manufactured destabilization of our country, Canada is promising another $5 billion. What does he have? A distant cousin that needs a mansion on the Nile? Is that what they need the money for, or do they need to continue? How much bribing do they need to do? So that's always an interesting. What do they need the money for? We have absolutely no idea. But Trudeau is going to steal another $5 billion from you guys and give it to Ukraine. Why? Because nobody else is giving to Ukraine. The world is basically stopping the dime. And we're going to get to that in just a couple of minutes. But this is Richie Sunak showing up at the G7, and I want to show you guys so you guys can actually, although Georgia Maloney is the host of this event, she's playing good host without necessarily being ideologically aligned with any of the individuals at said event. So this is what makes this so dynamic because they had just said that they'll do their part to maintain their responsibility and I think they're going to send a little bit more money, but they are absolutely stopping the red line at Italian boys and girls will not go to fight a war against Russia. They're not at war with Russia, and they have no desire to be at war with Russia. They are merely fulfilling commitments. So to me, I'm really seeing this G7 as her, basically giving lip service to the globalists. When we look at who is there and who actually has sway or influence in their respective jurisdictions, she knows full well that these individuals that she's sitting with here right now likely won't be there next year. It'll be a brand new crop of fat cats that will be there, um, that will be at the meeting, and it's her year. It's Italy's responsibility to host this meeting this year, so that she's fulfilling responsibility. But it's going to be interesting to see what some of the discussions and outcomes are out of this, and I'm not going to play the volume on this, but it's going to be interesting to see what some people are going to get creative with this. But I wanted to show this because I wanted to watch the body language. The mandatory guy, get a kiss on the cheek. But from there, I think if Ms. Maloney could do cartwheels backwards to escape his maybe he's got rotten breath, or he's just taken too many etiquette lessons from Mr. Biden. But I might be a little bit out of sync here on my shows, or pardon me, on the links I was going to show you guys. So there's this one here, which is kind of a little bit more of an official update, and I'll read this one to you guys here so that you guys can find it in the Substack publication tomorrow, and get to know what Mr. Trudeau is committing us to again, while he is ignoring the plight of Canadians that he's creating. He's a typical narcissistic egomaniac, add psychopath to that, and he's making a mess that he has no intention of cleaning up. And he is committed to destroying this country down to the last old stock Canadian, so that he can be the king of the Build Back Better. But let's see here. Canada is set to provide significant military aid to Ukraine, including 2,300 decommissioned rocket motors, some nanic remote weapon systems, and more than 130 rounds of surplus small rounds ammunition. That is 130 rounds of surplus ammunition. Do you know how long that lasts on that battlefield? About 15 minutes, likely. This move is part of a broader effort to support Ukraine in its conflict with Russia. Additionally, Canada is contributing $5 billion to a new plan to aid Ukraine as G7 leaders meet in Italy, aiming to utilize frozen Russian assets to support Ukrainian President Zelensky. Norway also provided military to Ukraine, including grenade launcher ammunition worth nearly 42 million euros. Germany, however, currently does not have the capacity to provide Ukraine with additional Patriot air defense systems. So now this is where we have the stupid leading the damaged. It's the only way to explain what this meat muppet is committing to. But so in doing this, like when I showed you guys right at the beginning of getting into the news here about these people that are currently at this meeting in control of this, I wanted to set the tone for where these people actually stand in reality in their countries. These guys are all in desperate situations in those countries. And to add a little bit more to that, I want everybody to see and get the names, understand the names of these people that are on their way out. We need to know and pay attention to who's on their way in. And it's going to be up to us to understand this political shift in Europe right now. Um, here, Greg Travis identifies that there's at least four of these people that are getting their walking papers after their next election. So we're kind of leading up to this shift that I was talking about. This shift to the right, and I'm going to have a video here to share with you guys in a couple of minutes. But yeah, that's at least four of those seven are getting their walking papers almost immediately. And here's a comment that I thought was uh, incredibly informed. Just John Q, average public from repeated comments by U.S. congressional members. Most of the funds have gone to the U.S. MIC. That's the part that interested me. People understand all of this money, this $5 billion, all of the money that they're going to spend on Ukraine. They're sending, a token amount of bullets might last a day, but they're going to send $5 billion, which never is actually in Ukraine. It just goes to the arms manufacturers, the military industrial complex, that are actually the beneficiaries. So we've got companies here run by the military industrial complex, which basically controls Silicon Valley and own most of the elected officials, quote unquote elected. I use that term loosely. They're the ones that are the beneficiaries of the lobbyists and exactly that, the military industrial complex. So we need to understand this transition from the military industrial complex to the pharma military bioweapons industrial complex that Trudeau sees himself as a leader in the future of, which is the future of the industrial complexes moving forward that they're all squabbling about with the pandemic treaty negotiations that are going on. But in the meantime, the money that does get through, uh, many of the Ukrainian elite, to include Zelensky, have amassed significant wealth as they burn through the lives of Ukrainians. And Mr. Macron, we're going to get to that in just a couple of minutes, may be the leading cause of why this is happening right now, and it's based on a similar mindset. I think that the average citizen of the world is agrees with George Maloney. It's been easy to overlook the stupidity of our meat muppets and political clown class, and in stealing from us, we can go, oh, hoo, bad us, poor them, corrupt guys. We need to arrest them all day long, but at the end of the day, that doesn't they're not coming for your kids. They're not coming to conscript your kids and send them off to fight a war in Ukraine that the Ukrainians don't even want to fight. The only ones that want to fight it are these meat muppets that are siphoning so much off of the top. Um, and kind of this is why. To answer the question about default, look at what Lindsey Graham said a few days ago in an interview. They're sitting on 10 to 12 trillion dollars of critical minerals in the Ukraine. The U.S. knows Ukraine will never be able to pay back those loans, so they will privatize their miners, and hence we have BlackRock and every other military control mechanism and investor investing the money that they're stealing from us and manufacturing. This is how they're doing it through the ESG. They're going to control, they need to control 100% of the currency. And so long as we have cash and alternative currencies, they can't control that. So they can't funnel everything into their rebuilding, their restructuring of the new world as they see it for the Great Reset. So squeezing all of the corporations under the DEI, ESG, military industrial complex is meant to milk the population more directly, more effectively, more efficiently, so that they can get this done in their lifetimes, right? And here's another comment on that. Maybe we'll get some feedback from Bryce on this, but right on time when 22 billion US dollar Ukraine sovereign bonds mature in 2024, debt service costs for International Monetary Fund loans not included, still profits from Russia's portfolio guaranteed by EU taxpayers transfer funds to Ukraine, pay back Vanguard and BlackRock, the Global South. That's really what it boils down to. It's another war for resources and energy, and leveraging the military-industrial complex uh, to achieve those goals through threats, intimidation, abuse. Uh, there seems to be no end to what they have, how many lives that they will expend to achieve what they're actually after. But now I'm gonna pull up another video here. We're gonna keep this. This is gonna be a little bit shorter tonight. I know a lot of folks are gearing up to cheer Canada on for the Edmonton Oilers tonight. So the last thing I want to do is interrupt that on the international world stage. But we're gonna finish off here in just a minute with what we got here. We have got a video that discusses the massive conservative wave, but it could have been bigger, and not to be deceived. This is important. This is why I wanted to bring this up. You're going to see a lot of people chirping about why, or the legacy media, I mean, in cover up mode, are pretending and talking about the reasonings. So they're trying to paint this everybody that is shifting to the conservative as being far right because this is all must be race based. Well, that couldn't be farther from the truth. Yes, it's about illegal immigration, i.e., the flooding of countries and the rampant scale of crime out of control. Yes, that does have an impact on why we are seeing this shift. But the sudden, the explosive shift literally is taking place simply because of this event. The focus and these meat muppets that won't be there a year from now and deciding what they're going to do to further aggravate and seek an escalation of war against Russia. Um, Over the last couple of weeks, Macron has been very much riding the Napoleon horse, thinking he is going to send troops and end this, finish this on behalf of Ukraine. And he sounds exactly like the Napoleon of old. And people, Hitler didn't figure it out. Napoleon didn't figure it out. And none of these meat muppets seem to figure it out, be able to figure it out either. They cannot do what they have grand delusions of doing, the same as Napoleon intended to do in his war that basically wiped out the French population in nothing but meat grinders destroying the French. And this is what Macron is proposing to do: is to escalate and seek war up to nuclear capabilities. And these people here are guilty of, as we covered last night, Putin has the legitimate right within warfare to seek the destruction and the targeting of these nations. It's only because of his patience that we aren't seeing missiles, long range intercontinental ballistic missiles, taking out places like Ottawa. And Trudeau knows this. This is intended. Why do you think he's building a bunker 300 feet in the ground in Ottawa, spending another billions of your dollars to think that he's going to escape what's coming if by continuing down this path and hell bent on sacrificing every Ukrainian and every Canadian and every American and every Japanese person, every Brit, every German, every French person. This is who they intend to fight this in order to implement their agenda. They would rather rule over the ashes than to deal with common sense, practical reality. So that was the reference to the Napoleon complex. Is these guys all thinking with the Napoleonic mindset, and Napoleon literally had a blockade around the entire western seaboard of the European continent. He forced everybody to fight on his side and give him what he needed to go after Russia, and that's really no different than what Joe Biden is doing. They achieve things through proxy warfare, sacrificing the populations of other nations in order to expand their hegemony, their control. And this has gotten dangerous and bad and stupid. And through the direction of this military and industrial complex and Richie Sunak and others, they have supplied Zelensky with the ability to target Russian nuclear defense systems that Zelensky really has nothing to fear about. He's never going to enter a nuclear war with Russia because Zelensky doesn't have any nukes unless Biden gives him nukes, and the places where Zelensky is attacking Russia's nuclear defense systems have no bearing on the conflict as it exists through the special military operation in the eastern sector of the Ukraine. So this is why Putin has responded with saying, if you're going to give anybody the ability to strike Russian infrastructure, we can give people the ability to strike Russian infrastructure. So Putin is literally telling us that he'll give Cuba missiles, he'll give Iran missiles, he'll give anybody missiles if they're willing to point them at the United States. Why not? What does he have to lose? America will not answer to reason under the Biden regime. So he has now delivered his Navy to the coast of Cuba, and we're basically a few steps further than the Cuban Missile Crisis. So it's literally Cuban Missile Crisis 2.0. There are rumors that the Navy there is not nuclear armed. I don't think that's a bet I want to take. Russians don't bluff. People should be paying attention to what Putin is saying and addressing there. And I have um, every expectation that even if he is not delivering missiles to Cuba, he is delivering stuff to people somewhere down there, given the fact that most of the South American continent is making a shift to the real gangster in the room, Vladimir Putin. Joe Biden, the only person's afraid of Joe Biden is maybe Corn Pop. No, old Saucy, I don't blame him at all. People will only tolerate the bully until they don't. And unfortunately, we've got chihuahuas, and some of them actually senile and incapable, that are leading us into this path of insanity. But like I say often, the good news is sanity is unsustainable, and so are these temporary seats in these positions. And they're very afraid. They're very afraid of people like me. They're very afraid of what they see happening on the European continent. We're gonna play this here now. This is a bit of a longer video. This one's about 10 minutes long, guys. And we're gonna listen to Clayton and his guest, because they really hit the nail on the head on why we can't just even in Canada's case let our foot off the gas if we see a shift in politics. So let's go with this.
Has given the big middle finger to globalism. If this just Well, it looks like Europe has given the big middle finger to globalism. If this just happened in one country, it might be, sort of a one-off. If it happened in two countries, maybe you could say this is a coincidence, but the red wave of elections appears to have hit Europe. And we wanted to bring back in academic researcher Ralph Schulhammer, who we talked about this just a few days ago before the elections. Were we going to see a massive red wave come to Europe? And Ralph is back with us today. Ralph.
I've reached out to Ralph. If anybody has a connection with Ralph, I would love to have him on our show and talk to us at length. But he has a great 10 minutes here with Clayton.
It looks like that has happened. Let me just go down the list here because, again, I think if this was just like a one or two countries, we could say maybe a coincidence. You have France trouncing Emmanuel Macron's party in France. We just got word, breaking news just a few minutes ago, Emmanuel Macron saying he is not going to resign. Belgium, huge wins there. You have Georgia, you have Italy, Germany, Ireland, Austria, Spain, Netherlands. I mean, the list is pretty extensive. And you have Poland. I just got word a few minutes ago from sources in Poland, unbelievable results there on the conservative side as well. So I think a red wave. I think it's safe to say a red wave has struck Europe. No.
I think you're right. I mean, I know we have to say this now because in the comments, people immediately say in Europe, you don't call it a red wave. It's a blue wave because conservatives over here are colored blue. But let's call it. I just tried to preemptively, save people the effort then to once again correct the two of us in the comments. But I think in essence, you're absolutely right. This was quite remarkable. And if we would go, let's say, to the good, the bad, and the ugly, I think the very good is if you look at who voted or who shifted to the right. In many countries, I know the numbers for Germany, Austria, Sweden, and the Netherlands, it has been the young people. And I think we see a similar development in other countries as well. And that's very encouraging. And we see, I looked it up also in the United States, we see it across the Atlantic as well. Gen Z is becoming more conservative, and at least men. I think if you make a gender breakdown as well, this would be equally interesting. But overall, there's a shift in the younger generation because, of course, many of the policies that you and I have been talking for, well, over 3 years now, I think the younger generation starts to realize they will be in the receiving ends of the long-term consequences of all these policies, from mass migration, from inflation, from the new Green Deal, right? All these policies that on the long run have negative consequences. The young generation is going to feel them much, much harder than probably we do. What I call just one moment, the little bit what I call the bad is, unfortunately, I would say that in some areas the Europeans have lost the courage of their own convictions and have very often voted for what I call the lukewarm right, kind of the Merkel, von der Leyen, CDU, CSU in Germany, the same with the conservatives in Austria. So they are very often what I would call conservatives in name only. Now, it's better than voting for the Green Party, who really was trounced in all elections. But I think the real willingness to vote for a party that is kind of shifting the system, that is making true change, is still not where it's supposed to be. And that brings me directly to the ugly, which is that despite the successes you correctly mentioned, as it looks at the moment, until Macron pulls off a stunt in order to kind of increase his chances in the upcoming elections, I think that von der Leyen and all the rest of the Brussels bureaucracy will remain in power for the foreseeable future.
So that is the ugly. That is truly the ugly.
So, but I don't want to discourage this. I mean, this is a good, like an optimistic development. But let's put it this way: I call it a turning point where not yet everything has turned. Let's call it this, but it's definitely the beginning.
So what was this a repudiation of? What did these voters say we've had enough of? Forgive the preposition at the end of a sentence here, but what did they say no to? We talked about the Green Party, and as you mentioned, the green policies seem to have been one of the major drivers of this. No?
Yes, I mean, we see one exception, by the way, are the Scandinavian countries where left-wing parties actually made significant gains. But you're absolutely correct. In continental, central, southern, western, eastern Europe, this was a repudiation of the Green parties, a repudiation of whatever the Green New Deal in its details would entail. I think it's a repudiation of the degrowth agenda, right? This idea that Europe can become a better place by being poorer, because ultimately that's the agenda of those who are currently in power, even though they don't say it openly. And people reject this. I think what we also see, especially with the younger generation, is, of course, they fear, justifiably so, they fear for their future. We talked about this previously, but I have to stress this enough. There are school districts in urban areas, but also increasingly in rural areas, where 50, 60, 70% of high schoolers don't speak the local language. There is an increase in crime. There's always this absurd contention. Well, but crime rates don't really reflect it. Yes, because people are so frustrated with the system. They say, if I report a crime, nobody's going to take care about it anyway. So they don't even report crimes anymore. But that does not mean that these crimes are not happening. It's even worse. You're both the victim of a crime and an incompetent state. And this is, I think, what people increasingly turn against. Mostly so in Germany, because the Germans under the current government has shown how incompetent they can be. But you see similar developments all over Europe. So it is a frustration with many bits and pieces to it. But as you correctly pointed out, it is the beginning of a revolution against the quote-unquote system. And we can then define in greater detail what we mean by that.
Yeah, I'm encouraged by the younger generation. Anecdotally, I mean, you're hearing this from a lot of different families where their children, 12, 13 years old, come home from school and they're like, they make fun of like woke policies that they're hearing about in their schools. My son had to deal with an assembly where they got together and they heard a speaker come from some organization to explain the benefit of 15-minute cities. And he was sitting there. It's like, they don't know who his dad is back home talking to him about 15-minute cities. So he's sitting there looking around at his friends like, wait a minute, we're going to not have cars. We'll live in these smart cities. You're presenting it to us as this is the answer for the world. We won't drive anywhere. We'll live in this contained zone and you'll monitor everything we do with smart transactions. And that's the way they were presenting it to these kids. And these kids are sitting there saying, this doesn't sound right.
Yeah. No, I think it's that. Another element is, don't forget,
I think this is a key point because you're probably starting to see some entertainment videos talking about Gen X, right? And how Gen X is feral, and I love those Gen X videos. They are hilarious. But one of the topics of discussion on the Gen X class, the ones that drank from the garden hose and didn't die, were left outside alone till the streetlights went out on. But that generation, the I don't give a generation, and people look at those for the longest time as being the feral generation, but they're not noticing what's coming after the millennials. So you get the Gen X, the millennials, Gen Z, guys, is going to be a whole different thing for people to deal with because they are the ones that are coming into this mess and saying absolutely nothing sane about what these lunatics are trying to foister onto our society. And they're going to dismiss a whole lot more as they start to grow their voice. If anybody thinks that Gen X was feral, wait till they hear what Gen Z starts to come up with as they start to develop a voice. It's kind of funny looking at the millennials having to pay taxes and seeing this shift into the Gen Z starting to have a voice in the public square. The Overton window for topics allowed open for discussion, I think, is going to come back a little bit.
Over the last 2 years, right, we were told by the mainstream media and by most of those in power, with a few exceptions, that territorial integrity of Ukraine is very important, that how wonderful it is to observe nationalism and patriotism in Ukraine. And I share that sentiment. But young people, justifiably so, once again say, wait a moment, if I'm Austrian, if I'm German, if I'm French, so you're telling me I can love a country that is far, far away, but I cannot love my own country? And no, I think they are now saying, wait a moment, if patriotism is cool in Ukraine, I think it's also cool in France. It's also cool in Spain. It's also cool in Austria, which I think is one of the great unintended consequences of all of this, because we need more patriotism. We need more nationalism. We need more social loyalty to each other, to our traditions, to our culture, right, to the things that connect us. I think this is a very, very positive development, and I'm glad to see it reflected in the voting behavior now as well. This is hopefully the beginning of a lasting trend and not a one-off.
When you sat back and looked at the election results, were there a few big surprises that stood out to you, like wow moments for you?
Yeah. Why is it bad to be a Canadian patriot, but we're supposed to fall in line to be a Ukrainian patriot? The place that has no legitimate leader, is a bona fide dictator, refuses to give up power after losing his time in office, banned and jailed all of his political opposition and all churches in his country, suspended elections, and made it illegal for anybody to negotiate peace until he defeats Russia, and he'll never defeat Russia. He's hosting a conference in Switzerland, a peace conference that nobody's showing up to because it's impossible to negotiate peace with an illegitimate leader who's made a law that you can't negotiate peace. So they're kind of trapped in themselves in their little meat muppet Mr. Olansky dichotomy catch-22 situation where they are on a doom self-destruction loop. And yeah, so the discussion of peace in Ukraine is moot at this point until enough people get until enough people have been stricken by the Alansky curse, as Alex Christoforou says. But we'll finish this here.
You?
A little bit. I mean, one is that I personally, I hate to admit this, I was hoping for more of a wave than it ultimately became. I always say it was a shift, but it was not an earthquake as I was hoping for. For example, the Freedom Party, which is kind of the Austrian version of the Alternative for Germany, or Austria's Le Pen, if you want, they were predicted to get between 27 and 30% of the vote. They ended up with 25% or 25.5%. And I found that a little bit disappointing. I think the AfD in Germany could have done better if they would not have almost self-destruct shortly before the election, which shows you, which is also, I think, equally important, that right-wing parties in Europe have, let's call it, different degrees of maturity. Le Pen, for example, and sometimes she gets criticized by this for non-French right-wingers, let's say, that she has also signed up to the globalist agenda, as did Meloni. And so I cut them some slack, because I think what they're doing, and maybe I'm wrong and too optimistic, but I think they are trying to play the long game. It is often forgotten that France, and Italy even more so, these are notoriously difficult countries to govern. And I think what Meloni is trying to do is she says, in order to change things in a sustainable way, I need to stay in power. I mean, look at what the EU is talking about. Their plan, if von der Leyen cannot be maintained in office, is to replace her with Mario Draghi. I mean, this is like a zombie movie. Like, at the end of the movie, they bury the monster. And then when the camera, moves out, you see once again the hand coming out of the grave and saying, it's not over. And this is exactly like this. So the establishment, if the bureaucracy, they will try to strike back. And yes, there's a lot of things that I would have hoped Meloni would do that she didn't do. But I'm still happy if Meloni is in charge and not Draghi or Baerbock or, or you name it. So I think we have to learn on the right that sustainable victories and a series of victories is more important than one-offs that make us feel good, but then start to fizzle out. I mean, this is basically what Trump said, and he was correct about this, about the deep state. It's not enough to sometimes be the president. It's not enough to be sometimes in office. You need to create conditions where even if you lose office, your ideas, your vision of the future is still in power. And that's the last point. And that's the crucial thing about the Greens. Like, the Greens have been decimated, but they have not infiltrated, they have marinated, they have socialized an entire generation of students, of public servants, of institutions, that even if they would be gone from parliaments tomorrow, their ideas would still last, right? This is something, it's like it's like a cold, if you want, that gradually we have to get, we have to cure ourselves gradually off. And just winning the occasional election is not enough. We need to play the long game here. And I hope that this is what people like Meloni, what people like Le Pen are doing. And I think the AfD is, for example, not yet sure if they really want to be in government, or if they're enjoying to be the kind of raucous, provocative, polemic opposition party, if they enjoy this a little bit too much.
Well said. Well, I think, the dust is settling now, and we'll see. Perhaps we'll see a greater blue wave in Europe in the coming coming months ahead.
And so, I thought that was very, very enlightened discussion, and right now it's time to put our foot on the gas, but we can't stop. We're only at the beginning of the turning point, and just getting, for example, a conservative in power for 4 years and we get a respite, that doesn't fix or solve the problem or make it go away. And even if we crush the Greens in the next election, it's not going to make it go away, because the ideology that these guys are planting, that Trudeau is planting, Freeland is planting, all of these WEF, Fourth Reich meat muppets are planting, that is still here. So we have to continue to push while we can in the Overton window and force them to have the discussions that we need them to have. We have to force them to make real and utter the words and say the things that we need them to say, to address, so that we can begin to start changing that culture, because we have to change the culture before we can change the politics. This is where it's up to us to continue to have these discussions, but while they make them possible. And that's kind of the key here right now. And the reason I say right now is because every potential political meat muppet has got his best hound dogs out there sniffing the political winds, seeing which way is it going to go. What do they have to do to maintain their power, or to get elected, or to replace the other guys? Every one of them is sniffing out there. What's going to work? What's going to work? What's going to work? What's going to work? Guys, well, we know what's going to work. The only 100% safe and effective cure for globalism is absolutely localism. All right, guys, I love you all. Thank you so much for tuning in tonight. Go Canada, go team Edmonton Oilers. If you find some value, want to throw us a cup of coffee, that is how you do it. Otherwise, like, subscribe, and share. I meant to show you guys this. And why are all of these meat muppets failing and flailing? Because they're all a part of this. And you'll find pretty much every one of those names on this list here, except Georgia Maloney, who I think, like the good professor, is kind of playing the long game, as I described earlier, where she knows that most of these meat muppets aren't going to be around much longer. So Thank you for tuning in. Stay Canadian, stay mighty, my fellow hostages. And until tomorrow, where we have bankers, bandits, bullions, and bucks with Bryce, you have yourself an amazing day. And I hope you're planning for an unbelievable weekend. So, last comment before I throw on one of my favorite sponsors that's been getting a really bad rap. I'm going to do a segment on these guys and hopefully shed a better light on this real soon, sometime next week. But guys, I love these guys. Check them out. It's worth it. And if you have any questions, message me directly. I think this is important, and hearing back, we've had some people that have joined the team, and so far they have made more than $6,000 in commissions for getting a better product than they can get at any of the BlackRock owned Leviathans out there. So I love these guys. I love you all more. Thank you all for all that you do. You are appreciated, and we'll see you tomorrow.